Welcome to Links and Locks Action Network's golf betting podcast presented by Bet365. I'm your host, Andy Lack, and I will be joined alongside Action Golf contributor Tony Sartori for these Best Bets episodes. And just like Jason and Ben have done it in the last couple of years, Tony and I will play 18 holes today, giving our 18 favorite picks for this week's tour event, the Arnold Palmer Invitational Bay Hill. Before we dive into this week's episode, a reminder that the Links and Locks podcast is presented by Bet365. Bet365 doesn't do ordinary. That's why you get more boosts with them than with anyone else every day. They power up the odds on hundreds of bets to give you a chance to win more. Bet365 boosts specific markets, your winnings, and even parlays, and they don't stop there. Keep an eye out for their biggest and best odds with the incredible Super Boost. Check out the boost and see why it's never ordinary at Bet365. Must be 21 or older and present in Arizona, Colorado, Iowa, Louisiana, New Jersey, Ohio, Virginia, or 18 or older in Kentucky. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER or 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa. Terms, conditions, and restrictions apply. Okay, Tony, we are on the first tee here for our Arnold Palmer Invitational Best Bets. Get us started.
All right, absolutely. So smaller field this week, another signature event, but should be an awesome week. And here's what I'm looking for at Bay Hills. I'm looking for strong drivers, or at least it doesn't even have to be distance, just gain strokes off the tee, or just good ball striking. It's a big course, mostly flat, but there's a lot of water. You got to avoid that. And that's why I think ball strikers will succeed here. We saw it last year where 4 of the top 7 finishers ranked 12th or higher in strokes gained off the tee and driving accuracy. Those are the only 2 stats or metrics, whatever you want to call them, where that type of trend occurred. And that's going to bring me to my first outright pick for the week, and that's Ludwig Aubert at 20-1. I mean, we've talked about him on the podcast before. He's the next up in terms of like generational superstars. It didn't take him long to win on tour. He already won at the RSM Classic back in November. His ball striking receives all the attention as it should. He's an elite ball striker, but he's also a great putter. There's not really a weakness in his bag. He actually gained more strokes putting at that RSM Classic than he did in any other category. And the reason I mention this is because the RSM Classic is a tournament that is also contested on Bermuda grass greens, which is what he'll be putting, the same putting surface he'll be on this week. And then, I mean, this guy just has one of the purest swings on tour. I think he's next up, and it'd be a huge statement win for him if he's able to win this week at 20-1. So that's what I'm going to start us off with.
That was the first bet that I made on Monday morning as well. It's the first pick that I have laid out here on my outline. So I'll pivot. I'm going to go with another young Scandinavian bomber of the ball elite long iron player in Viktor Hovland, who you can find at 15-1 enhanced win on Bet365. Hovland struggled a little bit to start the year. It's been a little bit of a muted 2024 for the reigning FedEx Cup champion. With that being said, I think that's baked into his number. I think 15-1 on this golf course where he's gained over 9 strokes ball striking each of the last 2 years is an incredibly fair number on Hovland, a guy who actually, it really started to come together for him at Riviera. He gained over a stroke and a half in both ball striking categories. And even more encouraging, the number one thing that you always worry about with Hovland is the short game. He gained strokes around the green both Saturday and Sunday at Riviera, and he has been working quite hard on the short game as well, from my understanding. Also, not to mention the fact that if you really dive into it and you look at many of Hovland's best around the green performances in his career have come on courses with thick rough and Bermuda grass courses, right? So Hovland's best short game performances, they're at courses like Los Angeles Country Club, Memorial, Oak Hill, Eastlake, TPC Southland, right? And I think that's because it's a little bit easier for a guy like Hovland to pop the ball out of thick rough. It's a little bit of a different chipping technique. So I think the combination of the elite ball striking that he brings and the fact that he always seems to raise his baseline around the green on these types of courses with thick rough, I am going to roll with Viktor Hovland 15-1 enhanced win on Bet365.
I love it. I agree with you. And I definitely think that that number is higher than it would be had he not had that kind of poor start to this season. But I'm also going to go to a guy who's been playing a terrific brand of golf recently, and that's Cameron Young. So right now he's 28-1 at Bet365. I mean, this guy, he's got 3 straight finishes inside the top 16. And he's just coming off that 4th place finish at last week's event down in Florida. Young, I mean, he's gained strokes off the tee in each of his past 6 tournaments, and he now ranks 5th in this field in strokes gained off the tee this season. The driver's been excellent. His putting is also starting to get hot, especially on Bermuda grass greens, as he has gained true strokes putting at both the Cognizant Classic and the Waste Management Phoenix Open. 2 venues are both contested, or 2 tournaments are contested on Bermuda grass greens as well. He finished inside the top 8 in both those tournaments. So, I mean, if the driver's working well, his irons are working well, his putter's working well, that's kind of a pretty good recipe for success here at Bay Hill. And then finally, speaking of success here at Bay Hill, Young has finished inside the top 13 twice in each of his 2 appearances here. So he's played this course well. He's in outstanding form. So I think 28-1 is just a little long. So I think it's worth a shot there as another outright winner for Cameron Young.
Love that. He just missed my betting card, but he will be coming up for me in a different market later in this podcast. I'm going to go with Will Zalatoris 32-1 enhanced win on Bet365. I think you just want to play Will Zalatoris on these types of golf courses with thick, rough, and firm greens. He is the #1 player in tee to green over the last 5 years. When you filter out firm courses with thick, rough, and you look at his success at tracks like Riviera, Torrey Pines. He is a 10th place at Bay Hill before. The Country Club at Brookline, that U.S. Open venue, Southern Hills. He has had so much success on these more difficult total driving and long iron tests. Obviously, he is starting to really round into form after a 2nd-place finish at Riviera. I think you just want to go to Zalatoris on these types of tougher golf courses that emphasize ball striking. He has spoken about many times before, including in his press conference at Riviera, about how these types of courses, these types of major championship tests bring out the best in him. He does not like easy golf courses with a high greens and regulation percentage where he has to outputt the entire rest of the field. This is a type of golf course that is going to accentuate his elite tee to green skill. He is a high ball hitter who can get the ball to stop on these firm greens with a long iron. I think that is the #1 most important thing at Bay Hill. So I'm going with Will Zalatoris 32-1 this week, enhanced win on Bet365.
Yeah, I love it. He does always elevate his game on these tougher courses, and I was very close to picking him in the outright market as well. I'm gonna transition us into the finishing positions market, and I'm gonna go after Sahith Theegala top 5, which is 11-1. I think that number is just too long for a guy of his talent. He finished 5th at the Waste Management Phoenix Open, 2nd at the Century. Those are against also pretty solid fields. And those tournaments were also both contested once again on Bermuda grass greens, which we will be putting on this week. He gained strokes putting at each of those tournaments. But not only can he putt, but he's fantastic with the driver. He ranks 45th on tour in strokes gained off the tee. And this is, of course, he's played before. He just finished 14th here last year. His game has only continued to improve since then. So, I mean, if you're telling me that 11-1, that he's going to be 9 positions better than last year, I think that's absolutely worth the shot. So I'm going to go after Theegala, top 5 at 11-1.
Love that. I'm going to go to the top 10 market and roll with Tommy Fleetwood at plus 230. Another player who typically raises his baseline when the going gets tough. He has had a tremendous amount of success both at Bay Hill and in the state of Florida. He's played well at the Honda Classic before. He's played well at the Players before. He loves Bermuda greens. He loves tougher conditions. He loves windier conditions. That's why he's played so well at US Opens before, British Opens before. And he's playing some pretty good golf to start the year. Obviously, he won on the DP World Tour in Dubai, had another solid top 10 finish at Riviera. I know we have some difficulties with Tommy Fleetwood closing the door on this side of the pond on the PGA Tour, but I think to get him at over 2-1 just to finish in the top 10 on a golf course, that should accentuate his elite scrambling ability, his elite tee to green ability. I'm going to roll with Tommy Fleetwood plus 230 in the top 10 market.
Nice, nice. I'm gonna stay in that top 10 market as well, and I'm gonna go after Ben On top 10 at plus 360. There's a guy I feel like I target every week. I just think he's one of the better, more underrated players on tour, and I still feel like the market consistently undervalues his pricing. He's finished in the top 10 in 4 of his past 11 tournaments, so that bodes well when you're catching a number at plus 360, especially in a field now where we're only gonna have 69 guys playing on this week. And this is also a course there Ben On has had success. He finished 10th here in 2019. So he's proven they can fall within this range at Bay Hill. And it really shouldn't be shocking that he's shown success here, given that he's a great ball striker. He ranks 26 on tour in strokes gained off the tee. And I just think he's in good form. He's finished top 10 here before. So at plus 360, it's worth a shot at Ben On to finish top 10.
Huge fan of that play. I have a Benny on play coming up myself in another market. I'm going to go with Keegan Bradley, top 10, 4-1. Keegan Bradley is another player that typically raises his baseline in tougher conditions. He's had a sneaky great record in Florida and on Bermuda as well. He finished 7th at the Players last year. Actually, 5th at the Players, 7th at the Players a couple of years ago. He's got a runner-up at the Valspar in the last 2 years. He's playing some great golf this year, a little bit under the radar. Remember, he almost won the Sony Open in January on Bermuda. So I think at 4-1 to finish in the top 10, a player that has a lot of pedigree, has raised his baseline in tougher conditions, former major champion winner, has had a lot of success, has no problems playing against some of the better fields. Keegan actually historically raises his baseline in tougher field events. He did win a signature event last year at TPC River Highlands. So at 4-1, just to finish in the top 10, I think there is a ton of value on Keegan Bradley this week at plus 400.
Absolutely. And you just talked about a guy with high pedigree, former major champion. That's exactly where I'm going in the top 20 market with Adam Scott at plus 150. So he's getting a little bit older now, obviously, but he had a bit of a resurgence last fall. And it all started when he finished 5th at the Butterfield Bermuda Championship. Again, another Bermuda grass greens, obviously. Following that tournament, he went over to Europe for the winter and he fired off 3 straight top 7 finishes. Obviously, over in Europe, you're not facing as tough a competition, but that's still impressive nonetheless. So then he came back here in the beginning of this season, and that success has just continued to mount for him. He's finished inside the top 20 in all 3 of his tournaments over here. So I mean, with that trend and that plus 150, I feel like it's worth to take a shot on a former major champion, former Masters champion, to compete against some of the world's best and continue to like find himself in the top 20 of leaderboards. So Adam Scott, top 20 plus 150.
Love that. I'm going to go with another former major champion that actually broke my heart last week in Shane Lowery. I was on him as an outright play. It looked like he had a very good chance heading into Sunday. He was tied for the lead with 2 other very unproven PGA Tour players. Couldn't get the job done on Sunday. That water ball on 15 sunk our hopes and dreams. But I actually think there's a lot of value on him this week. I was very surprised to see his odds. I'm betting him plus 175 in the top 20 market. Again, as you mentioned, this is a field of 69 players. I looked back because this is not the first time that Lowery has had a disappointing defeat at the Honda Classic. Remember, he finished 2nd in heartbreaking fashion again in 2022. He came back the very next week and finished 13th at the Players, right? So I don't think that there will be some sort of emotional letdown for Shane Lowery this week. He is still a great driver of the ball, a great long iron player. He is won and played a lot of excellent golf on tougher courses with thick, rough, and firmer greens. He's played great at major championships. He's won the Bridgestone before. That's another tough, long golf course with thicker rough. He's got 2nd at the U.S. Open at Oakmont. That's another tough golf course with thick, rough, and firm greens. So Shane Lowery, I wasn't planning on betting him, but when I saw plus 175 just to finish in the top 20 market, I could not resist going back to the well with the Northern Irishman.
Absolutely. I'm actually going to be right kind of with you. I got a veteran top 20 plus 160, so right around that mark, and that's Harris English. So like Scott, English is kind of a guy who's had a bit of a resurgence over the past year. He's now finished inside the top 20 in each of his past 2 tournaments and in 5 of his past 8. So that bodes really well for a number like plus 160 again, especially. Yes, the competition's stiffer, but there's still only 69 guys in this field. And why I think he'll profile well here is that he's gained strokes off the tee in 7 of those 8 outings, and he now ranks 42nd on tour in strokes gained off the tee. I just want to keep riding this momentum, and I think English top 20 at plus 160 is worth a shot this week.
Love that. I'm going to go into the first round. I'm going to take us into the first round leader market for the first time in this episode and go with a player that you've talked about before already. And Cameron Young is 30-1 first round leader. I was filtering out, looking at difficult scoring conditions, round one, smaller fields over the last couple of years, right? So who are the players that get off to the best starts in smaller fields, no cut events? I think the strategy changes a little bit for these guys when they know that they have 4 rounds to work with. Maybe it frees them up a little bit, particularly in difficult scoring conditions when they know they don't need to go out there and make a million birdies and it's a marathon, not a sprint. Cameron Young has ranked 6th in this entire field in round one under those conditions. I think just as a full tournament play, you laid out all of the reasons why this is a great golf course for him. I think he is starting on second base at a golf course like Bay Hill due to his elite total driving ability. So I'm going to roll with Cameron Young 30-1 in the first round later market this week at Bay Hill.
Absolutely, I love it. Obviously, I love it because I got him outright. But I'm gonna keep us in that first round leader market and go after the chalk, and that's Scottie Scheffler. He's 16-1. I just think that it's worth a shot. You can get this number wider because to win the tournament, I think it's like 9-1 or 10-1. So this is a way to back Scottie if you want a little bit of a higher payout. As I always say on this podcast, I have not locked this in yet. I do want to see the tee times before I lock any of my first round leaders in. Right now, I'm leaning Scottie. I mean, it's just there's no tournament that he's never not gonna be in. There's no round that he's never like. He's gonna be a favorite to win every round that he's ever gonna be a part of, right? At least the way he's playing right now. But the one reason I particularly like him this week to end Thursday on top is that his one weakness obviously been putting, right? That's been the case for the past few years for him. But he does perform better on Bermuda grass greens, and most people do just because it's usually a little bit of easier putting surface than POA Annual, for example. But he finished 3rd at the Waste Management Phoenix Open, which he's a 2-time winner of, 5th at the Century, and he won the Hero World Challenge. That's all been this season, and all 3 of those tournaments are contested on Bermuda grass greens. The reason that's what's more impressive than just the finishing position, because he's always in the top 10 anyway, is that he gained cumulative strokes putting over those 3 tournaments. It is very rare you ever see Scottie Scheffler come out in the green in true strokes putting, but over those 3 tournaments he has been. So considering that if the putter is working, we know everything else in his bag is going to work. So I think it's worth then 16-1 for Scottie Scheffler to lead after the first if he's able to keep that putting at least just keep it baseline and not lose strokes putting on this Bermuda grass greens, which I don't think he will.
Like that one. I'm going to stick with the first round later market for one more and go with Benny on 40-1 first round later. You talked about him earlier in another market. He is another player that just seems to get off to a really hot start whenever I filter out for round one. Benyon is one of the biggest risers in this field in terms of his baseline in round ones. You mentioned his just course fit in general. He's had a lot of sneaky success on these tougher courses with firm greens and thick rough. I'm looking at the 2020 BMW Championship at Olympia Fields, like this very rock hard greens, thick rough, windy test that's very synonymous with the scoring conditions that you see at Bay Hill. Benny On came out of nowhere to finish 12th in that tournament. He also has a runner-up and an 11th at the Memorial. Another course kind of synonymous with these conditions that accentuate elite total driving ability. And he's playing really good golf right now. He's got back-to-back top 25 finishes. He started off the year with back-to-back top 5 finishes, so he's already got 4 top 25 finishes and 6 starts this season on the PGA Tour. He's very comfortable on Bermuda. He's had a lot of success on Bermuda in the past. So I'm going to go with Benny on 40-1 first round later.
Absolutely. And I'm going to keep us in that first round leader market for one more on my end. And I'm going Mattheu Pavon, first round leader. He's 66-1. So he's obviously in great form. He's up there in the FedEx standings. He just won at the Farmers Insurance Open. He immediately followed it up with a third place finish at Pebble Beach. He's got a good all around game, and I kind of trust every club he has in the bag. But like he's able to gain strokes off the tee, ranks 44th on tour in that category. But another thing that I think where he could stand out this week is that he's 16th on tour in greens and regulation percentage from 100 to 175 yards. That is the largest distribution of where approach shots come from this week. And so if he's gaining strokes on the field by hitting greens from a distance that he's very comfortable with, then I don't think it's out of the question that he gets off to a hot start, or rather continues his hot start to the season on Thursday. So that's 66-1. I like Pavon in the first round. I think the reason this number is even this long is because he's never played here before, but neither did Kurt Kitayama, and he won it last year. So I'm not too worried about that.
I'm going to go back to the top 20 market for just one more in the top 20 market before I close this out with a matchup here, and roll with Stefan Yeager 2-1 plus 200 top 20. He was very disappointing for us last week at the Honda Classic, but I'm going right back to the well with Stefan Yeager. Very much shades of Kurt Kitayama last year in terms of the type of skill set that Yeager possesses. He has picked up a lot of distance this year. Okay. Yeager has quietly found himself as one of the longest drivers now on the PGA Tour. He's a great long iron player as well. I just think if you want to go looking down farther for some value down the board in terms of players that are still able to possess that elite tee to green skill that has allowed players like Scottie and Rory and Jason Day and Tiger over the years to have so much success at Bay Hill, Stefan Yeager can give you a B version of that at a much more depreciated price. I think there's a lot of value on what Stefan Yeager can bring to the table. So I am betting him just in a field of 70 to finish in the top 20. That is one of my favorite bets on the board this week. Stefan Yeager, top 20 plus 200, bet 365.
That number shocks me. I think I really, really, really like that play. I got burned by him last week as well, but it definitely wasn't his driver last week. That wasn't the problem. So if he's able to carry that again this week, I like that a lot. But then for my final play, I'm gonna go top 30. I'm gonna go Siwoo Kim, and that right now is just even money, top 30. You just gotta beat out half this field. I think undoubtedly Siwoo Kim is a top 30 to 35 golfer in this field. I mean, just feels like a safe number at plus money. He's got 3 top 25 finishes over his past 4 tournaments. He's gained strokes off the tee in all 4 of those outings. Yeah, he's not a long hitter, but he's accurate. So he's going to avoid that water. He's going to avoid problems. And I think with that accuracy, or I'm sorry, due to that accuracy, Kim ranks 28th on tour in strokes gained off the tee. I think that's more than enough that he'll need to do just to beat out or finish in the top half of this field at plus money.
Love that. I'm going to finish this off with the matchup. And I'm going to go to the very top of the board here. I'm going to take Rory McIlroy plus 110 over Scottie Scheffler. I want to get some exposure to these guys. I think that on a golf course like Bay Hill, that probably accentuates tee to green skill more than nearly any other golf course on the PGA Tour. I think one of these guys, I'm hitching my wagon to Rory this week, is going to be highly relevant in this tournament. The PGA Tour certainly needs that this week for their stars to finally show up. And Rory is rounding into form. I loved what I saw last week from him at the Honda Classic, or renamed the Cognizant. He was one of the leaders in strokes gained off the tee, gained over 5 strokes off the tee last week. And Scottie was spotted this morning fiddling around with a new putter. He's going back to the Spider. Who knows if that works out for him? he could easily be the winner of this tournament by 5 strokes. We know the elite tee to green skill that Scottie possesses, but Rory's hitting the ball almost as good as Scottie right now, and he has been an absolute walking top 10 at Bay Hill. He's got a win here. He's got 7 other top 15 finishes in 8 appearances. I trust Rory's putter just a little bit more than I trust Scottie's putter right now. First time going to a mallet from a blade. There's just a lot going on right there, right now with Scottie on the greens. It feels like he's gotten a little bit in his head. So I'm going to take the chance that at plus money, um, I think there's not a lot of separation between these two players right now on this golf course. And if you're going to give me plus money on Rory McIlroy, I am going to take it. So that will do it for us on this best bets segment. That is our 18th pick for the Arnold Palmer Invitational. Before we get out of here, final reminder that the Links and Locks podcast is presented by Bet365. Bet365 doesn't do ordinary. That's why you get more boosts with them than with anyone else. Every day they power up the odds on hundreds of bets to give you a chance to win more. Bet365 boosts specific markets, your winnings, and even parlays, and they don't stop there. Keep an eye out for their biggest and best odds with the incredible Super Boost. Check out the boost and see why. It's never ordinary at Bet365. Must be 21 or older and present in Arizona, Colorado, Iowa, Louisiana, New Jersey, Ohio, Virginia, or 18 and older in Kentucky. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa. Terms, conditions, and restrictions apply.
And another quick heads up, North Carolina is launching sports betting on Monday, March 11th. So if you're in the Tar Heel state, take advantage of the best sign-up offers across every sports book. Just follow the link in this episode description. All the North Carolina offers, all in one place. Just check out the link in this episode description.
As a reminder, our action experts Spencer Aguiar and Nick Bretwish return with host Roberto Arguello tomorrow for the Arnold Palmer Invitational betting preview right here on the Links and Locks podcast. So far, Tony Sartori. I'm your host, Andy Lack, and we will see you back here next week on the Links and Locks podcast presented by Bet365.